Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and today it's all about the prospects. That's right, the young kids, the exciting ones that are going to take Major League Baseball by storm, and of course the ones that you need to redraft right now in those leagues and look ahead as Dynasty buys. And I can't think of a better person to talk about this with than the one, the only Eric Cross. You can follow him on the Twitter machine at EricCross04. He is the lead fantasy baseball writer and prospect analyst for Fantrax. He also happens to be the prospect guru of the Fantasy Baseball Black Book 2022, now available on Amazon. His top 100 prospect profiles is the best in the business. If you play Dynasty and you don't get the Black Book for Eric Cross's work, I don't know what the hell you're doing with your life, but his work in baseball is just extensive. He is passionate about it. He is smart about it. And Eric Cross, I am just very happy that you carved out a little time in your busy schedule to chat about some of the youth movement in Major League Baseball with us today.
Man, Joe, I will always carve out time for you, my brother. Like, we're Team Black Book. We've been, friends for a while now. It's always fun to talk with you.
Always a good time, man. And I love seeing you. You're out there at the Cape Cod League. You're taking the pictures. Eric Cross has always got. He's a great follow on Twitter. He's always got great information, but he's always got a little something extra too, which I love. Like you and Welsh, with the little video sometimes. That's what you want. It's not just the numbers. It's the eye test too. And before we even jump into things, it's very important because it's become a younger person's game over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, players that you used to just keep on your watch list ended up becoming players that you really wanted to draft, and now they're players you want to start. However, in redraft leagues, and I know we're going to get to 10 prospects that you should be aware of in redraft leagues for 2022, it's tough because you go look at last year, right? Jared Kellneck, big-time talent, can't-miss kind of guy. Well, he missed in a big way, and then there's a Wander Franco who comes up and absolutely just smashes everything, right? So It's very difficult to gauge. So how do you approach prospects in your redraft? Is this something where you just sprinkle them in towards the end, or do you identify one or two that you are aggressive and then patient with throughout the season?
Yeah, I've taken a more cautious approach to prospects recently for redraft because for that a few years stretch we were definitely spoiled with when the years that Soto came up and Acuna and they just took the world by storm, and we got to remember that those are not those are the exceptions.
They're the anomalies.
To the rule. Yeah, they're not the expectation. They're the exceptions, and I think we kind of got away from that a little bit. And so then we see and then there was so many pitchers last year like Nate Pearson, Matt Manning, the list goes on and on, guys that struggled last year. So yeah, I try to take a more cautious approach. Like I'll more so sprinkle these guys in later on. I'm not really one that targets them super early. I haven't gotten any Bobby Witt Jr. shares this year. He's just going a bit too high for my liking. Love Bobby Witt Jr., but just too high. So I'll be getting like the Riley Greenes later on, Josh Youngs, those type that are going like 200 picks later. So with a lot less risk at that point in the draft.
All right, well, don't give up all the names already. We got to tease it. We got a whole show to do here. And, of course, Eric's going to take us through all of that. But before we do, I want to remind everybody the Draft Simulator is now up and running over at fantasypros.com/draftwizard for Major League Baseball. So get your draft on, get prepared. It is the most comprehensive, most incredible draft software available. You can run all kinds of different simulations. You can run all kinds of customizations, for whatever league that you're running, whether it be 5x5 points, 6x6, 10x10. I don't care. The Draft Wizard can handle it, and that's what's so amazing about it. And it's good. This is the practice you need. You start to see where the values are. You start to challenge yourself a little bit too, and maybe start to find some of those diamonds in the rough. But you have to go over to fantasypros.com/draftwizard to get involved with that and start drafting today. And Eric, we're going to start today with the top 10 prospects for redraft. Now, you mentioned Bobby Witt, so we're going to put him aside because everybody's talked about Bobby Witt. We talked about him on the mock draft special we just did a few days ago, so we already kind of got a little Bobby Witt feel. So take me through your number one guy here we're going to talk about in terms of prospects to basically focus on in redraft leagues in 2022.
Yeah, I'm going to start with Josh Young, Texas Rangers third baseman. Now he only has 122 games under his belt in the minor leagues, but that's all he needed to show how good of a bat he is, how advanced of a bat he is, how polished he is. Now this was a breakout college guy at Texas Tech, was one of the top picks in the draft back in 2019. All he's done is hit. 2 years, hit 316, 326, 322 overall career hitter, 21 home runs. Like this is we're going this on pure floor. Like he is probably one of the top 10 highest floors for any prospect in the game right now. He can hit for average. He can hit for power. This is a potential like 280 to 290 hitter, 25 to 30 home runs. Doesn't add any speed, but like this could be a really, really good 4 category guy for a long time. And this is one of the guys that I will target more heavily just because of how the polish is there. And these are the types of guys that usually translate more easily into the major leagues than guys like, Kellneck, who doesn't quite have the hit tool that Josh Young does, or other guys like that, like Luis Robert, for instance. So, yeah, this is a guy to target, and he's going pretty affordable in drafts so far. But, yeah, I think he can, if he's not up opening day, he's going to be up pretty early on. Like, he's ready.
And the Rangers seem like they're in a mode now to be in, right? I mean, if you're going to spend all that money on Seager and Marcus Semien, the thought process is, well, let's go. I mean, bring up the kids and let's start. The future is now, basically. What I like about Young is not only the OBP, which is very solid for him too, but I like that when you watch him hit, he can go the other way with a ball, but he's also able to go down and get that low inside pitch too. And sometimes with the young right-handed hitters, that doesn't really happen all that much. So Young is that guy for me too that I think everybody needs to be aware of. And his brother was drafted this past year, was it not? Right? Or am I completely losing my mind?
He's in the upcoming draft, Jace.
He's coming up this year.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, he'll be drafted in this summer. Yeah,
I think that's what it was. I was watching the new prospects for top 100 whatever prospects. The kids in Little League that they're following right now.
His brother's pretty damn good too. He could be a top 10 pick.
Yeah. So the Young brothers are gonna do all right when it comes to Major League Baseball, and I would be surprised if he didn't get the crack right away at that lineup, maybe even opening day, like you were saying. So Josh Young is one of those guys, Texas Rangers, one to look for. Polished hitter, good power. Give me another prospect here. Let's go to number 2 on the list that you think has an opportunity to make an impact in 2022.
Yeah, that's Riley Greene, from the outfielder from the Detroit Tigers. And this is right now my number 4 overall prospect for fantasy purposes. He's a underrated prospect for the sense that he doesn't have that one huge tool. He doesn't have like the 35 homer power, 30 steel wheels. He's not gonna hit like 320, but he can do everything very, very well. Hit for a good average. He could be a 25 homer bat, approach 20 steals as well. And you saw that last year between AA and AAA, hit 301, 387 OBP, 24 home runs, 16 steals in 124 games. And really, he got even better at AAA level, hit 308 up at AAA with 8 home runs and 4 steals in 40 games. He's going to be up very early. I've heard some rumblings about potentially opening day. We'll see on that. But another guy that, like Young, should be up very early, by the end of April or middle of May at the absolute latest. And he's another guy that, similar to Young, like I said, with the more advanced hit tool. Yeah, there are some strikeout issues with Greene, at least more so than there are with Young. So I'd give the slight edge to Josh Young this year. But Greene adds the speed in, so that's definitely going to be a nice element to his game. So this is a guy that could, if he gets, 5 months of the year under his belt with Detroit, he could flirt with like a 2015 season. He's that good.
All right. So do you have a comp for Greene to get people, trying to think and understand maybe either statistically profile or just physically who he reminds you of? Is there one that comes to mind?
Oh, that's a good question. I usually am not very good at comps, but give me about 5 seconds here. I could see.
When I watch him, he's still a little thin. Like he's a little, he's still in terms of body type. He's definitely a guy who's going to thin out. Reminds me a little bit like when Castellanos, was young, and you saw, okay, eventually over time he's going to add some more mass, add some more power to that bat. That was my kind of feel, when I just watched Riley Greene.
Yeah, that's definitely a solid one. Maybe. Maybe a slightly better Randy Arozarena, better contact skills than Arozarena. That's one that's pretty close. Maybe even a Cedric Mullins with a little less speed. Like he's that type of player overall, I think.
Well, I mean, we'll sign up for half of anything Cedric Mullins did last year, right? I mean, geez, talk about that guy having a breakout season. All right, let's go to another name on the list here. Number 3 on your redraft prospects to watch in 2022. Who is it?
Yeah, Bryson Stott, the shortstop for the Philadelphia Phillies, another guy that's just criminally underrated. But you look at what he can bring to the table, like another guy that doesn't have the loud tool, but can really do a little bit of everything across the board, and even just be above average across the board. This is one of the guys that I saw out in the Arizona Fall League back in October. Was very, very impressed with what he did out there. Last year, 299, 390, 486 slash line. 16 home runs and 10 steals in 112 games across 3 levels, ended that AAA, but for 10 games near the end of the season. And this is the type of guy with his on-base skills, like the high walk rates, which he's always posted, the high OBPs. This is a guy that just looks tailor-made for like the number 2 spot in the order. Got high contact guy, gets on base, solid pops, a little bit of speed, and number 2 in the order. That's gonna put you right ahead of Bryce Harper. So this is a guy that could score a ton of runs once he settles in, and it's another guy that's pretty near ready too. Like I could see him up early in the year. I don't think Philly really wants to roll with like Didi Gregorius anymore at shortstop.
Well, that was going to be my question too. I mean, you've
Yeah,
had the Seguras and the Didi Gregoriuses over the years there, and that middle infield. Kingery obviously did not develop into the player I think that they were
right.
hoping they would get. So there is an opening here, but I guess the question is, do you think that the kid is going to push that in spring training, or do you think they're going to go with the veterans early on and just kind of wait and let him develop a little bit more at AAA?
I think he definitely could push with a solid showing in spring. Like he comes out and hits like 350 in spring training. I think there's a chance he could be up right away because obviously Philadelphia is always in win now mode just with some of the contracts they have. They don't want to waste Bryce Harper's prime years. So I
Mhm.
think they're gonna if he shows up in spring training, shows that he can handle shortstop and he's hitting well, which I think there's a very good chance of both of those things happening. I think he could push opening day.
Well, it's kind of a deficit in the Phillies lineup too last year, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the knock on Bryce Harper was, well, he didn't drive enough runs, which I kept saying, well, maybe if somebody got on base ahead of him, it would help. This is that kind of guy. Like, I'm
Oh,
serious. Like
absolutely. Yeah.
that was the frustrating thing is that nobody was getting on base for this guy. He would come up there, he was just by himself, basically, bases zero, completely empty. And this is the kind of player I feel like Stott, who, if you're right, he a lot of good contact skills, puts the bat on the ball, and if he's a good enough base runner, this is a guy that if you hit him ahead of a Harper or somebody like that too, he could be in line to be a really good guy in the runs category, let's say.
Absolutely could. I think this could be a guy that's like 15 to 20 home runs, 10 to 15 steals, and maybe even 100 plus runs hitting in front of Harper. He's that
All
good
right,
on base guy.
let's switch, excuse me, from Philadelphia over to Chicago and talk about James Triantos for a second too, because I know you're high on him as well.
Yeah, this isn't really obviously not a redraft guy, but he's a prospect that everyone needs to be. If you play dynasty leagues, you need to be targeting James Triantos, whether it's in your first year player draft or just in general, because this kid can absolutely rake. I was talking with Jeff Ponce of Baseball America. We had an industry prospect only mock draft, and I had a bunch of those people on just discussing that afterwards, and he was saying that they were flirting with putting a 70 grade on Triantos' hit tool, which is absurd in general, but to put it on an 18-year-old that was just drafted out of high school,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the bat to ball skills are legit. The power is coming, like some solid speed there as well. This could be a guy that if you and I are talking again this time next year, this could be like a top like the 2023 Fantasy Baseball Black Book. This could be a guy that I'd be putting at like 16 overall or something like that. He's that good. So yeah, definitely a name to get in on now before the stock just absolutely skyrockets.
Well, I feel like it's the kind of thing too, where if you're in a keeper league situation, right, or any sort of auction situation where you throw a buck on him late in the draft, it just if you have the bench room, just stash him there. I mean, he's an athlete. First, I just want to put that out there when you watch him play, and explosive hands. I mean, the guy gets to the baseball, Eric,
Yeah.
and it just I remember the first time I watched Clint Frazier take BP, and he just like explosive, right? You're just like watching, going, man, this guy's hands are so fast. But this guy's better, I feel like. Like this guy, when I
Yeah.
watch him, he hits to all the fields, whereas Frazier was a little pull happy. But he just gets on top of the baseball. Man, does he hit it hard. Like, I don't know what the exit velo numbers on this kid are. I don't think I need to see the numbers because I know it's probably redonkulous. Like, the guy is. And I think that's what you look for. What separates a young player, right? Especially one who's 18 years old, right? This guy has you don't want to put Mike Trout on a guy or anything like that, but he's like that sort of athlete type. When you watch Mickey Mantle play and he looks like he's built like a football player. Same thing with Trout. To me, that's what Triantos is like.
For me, I actually have thought of a good comp for him. Obviously, it's a lot. I hate doing it because he's so young, but
Oh yeah.
the skill set, I can see if everything clicks. Obviously, this is a higher percentile outcome. I can see some like Xander Bogaerts, a guy that's just always hitting for a super high average, like potential 300 hitter, 25 home runs, sprinkle in a little bit of speed. We'll see. Have to see how Triantos kind of his frame builds as he gets older. But yeah, there's definitely a super high ceiling for him.
I mean, dude is strong. Dude hits the ball hard.
Yes, he
That's a
does.
player to watch. He's gonna be fun to watch too this year. I think that's one of the one where I think you're right. We're all gonna be sitting around watching those MILB reports and saying, "Oh, what did Triantos do?"
Yeah,
Just out of curiosity,
absolutely.
All right, let's get to another one here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go to Anthony Garcia, who I believe is next on your list.
Yes, I hate that I love Anthony Garcia so much because I'm a Red Sox fan and this is a Yankees prospect. But man, you want to talk about power? If there was a minor league home run derby, I almost might put money on Anthony Garcia winning it. Like the amount of raw strength this guy has in his frame is off the charts, and he kind of started showing that this past year. He's 6'5", 240. Like this guy could be playing like defensive end for the New York Giants or something like that, and he had 14 home runs in just 39 games this past year, 8 down in the complex level in Florida, then 6 more in 16 games at low A Tampa, all hitting 306, walked a super high rate, 31 walks in just 153 plate appearances at a 444 OBP. And yeah, it's lower levels, so stolen bases are always up in the lower levels, but he's pretty agile and has some solid foot speed for a guy his size. So maybe he won't be a total zero in the speed department down the road, but assuming he continues to show a good feel for hitting, which he has so far, this could be the next. I don't want to say the next Stanton and Judge, but man, it's hard not to get excited about the guy with this much raw power. It's insane.
That kind of power in that ballpark
Oh
potentially,
yeah,
and not to mention too, switch hitter.
yeah,
Like another thing that's a dying art form. You don't see a lot of it, and a different. Most guys when you have the lefty righty split there, you have a different swing, and clearly he does. I prefer the left-handed one for him personally. I'm just curious, when you watch him, do you see a difference there where you feel like, yeah, he's stronger from the, like, I think he's stronger from the left side from what I
yeah.
can see in terms of like the swing is just smoother, but the fact that he go there on the right and just, mash balls probably out of Yankee Stadium someday too, and that wiffle ball field that is Yankee Stadium.
Right.
He is an exciting player, but do you think that because of the injuries the Yankees have had and last couple of years, they've always been looking for guys to plug in the outfield, do you think he gets any sort of opportunity?
Not this year, but I think this is a guy that maybe could be up next year. He's 21 years old. So it's not like he's one of those 17, 18-year-old kids. Like
Right.
he's 21. I don't think he'll be ready this year. I think he'll probably be more so at high A and double A this year, but definitely 2023. You could be seeing him slotting in, fifth, sixth in that order, right behind those big boppers, and add another huge power threat. And yeah, that lefty, yeah, I think he is better from the left side, and I think that's gonna be where he focuses more on, especially at Yankee Stadium with that short porch and right. But the fact that he can hit from the right side, I think helps a little bit when he's facing a tough lefty. That always helps. So, but yeah, I'm definitely as a fantasy analyst, prospect analyst, I'm very excited about Anthony Garcia. As a Red Sox fan, not so much.
All right, so those are 5 prospects to watch in 2022. Let's move on to number 6. Who's next on the list?
Next on the list, let's go back to my Red Sox here. Let's get the Yankee mumbo jumbo out of here. Go to
You're
my
gonna do
Red
a little
Sox.
mouthwash here for you. That's what you're
Yeah,
gonna do.
exactly.
Okay.
Gotta get my mind back in the right state here, and go a guy that honestly I was I criticized the pick when it was made because it was a
Mhm.
very weird pick. It was an underslot. He was supposed to be a third round guy. I took him 17th overall, but Nick York has absolutely exceeded expectations. Like this kid can flat out hit. He's still only 19 years old, and last year as being one of the youngest in both low A and high A, come on to hit 325 with a 412 OBP, 14 home runs and 13 steals in just 97 games. Like this is a potential 300 hitter, 15 to 20 home runs, 15 to 20 steals. Like he honestly, I'm so excited that he'll be up in Double A this year so I can see him live, but all the video I've watched, like, he reminds me a lot of a young Dustin Pedroia. It's a
Mhm.
guy that can just put the bat on the ball, doesn't strike out much at all. Like he had almost as many walks as strikeouts this past year. So while facing competition that's 2, 3, 4 years older than he is on average. So yeah, maybe doesn't have the huge power speed blend of like a Bobby Witt Jr., but
No.
it's just could be a guy that flirts with 2020, at least gives you like 15-15 with a super high average, get hit into the top of the order, have a ton of runs scored. Yeah, the arrow is firmly pointing up with this kid.
Yeah, the Pedroia comp makes sense. And look, Pedroia ended up hitting for a lot more power than I think anyone ever anticipated.
Oh yeah,
And he's a little bit smoother. I would say a little stronger. At
Yes,
this point
agreed.
in his career, physically, if you look at him, than Pedroia was at that point. Pedroia
Oh,
was a
absolutely.
really tiny guy. This
Yeah,
guy's got a little bit more muscle mass, a little bit bigger body build, so I think that's good. But he is shorter. But look, I think we're getting past that. I think the Altuves of the world and, maybe Wander Franco and a couple other guys. Like, you could be shorter now and still pack a pretty good punch
right.
in terms of it. He's also a smooth fielder, too, which is, I think,
Yeah,
something that if you're going to play one of those middle infield spots, right, you got to be one of these guys who can, has good hands, moves the feet well, and that's going to get you to the big leagues pretty fast. You make contact and you field your position well. I think that bodes well for a prospect like York.
absolutely. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a very exciting. He'll be up in a few years, pair with Bogarts. Then when Bogarts moves off, maybe we get the recent number 4 overall pick Marcelo Mayer. It'll be a fun little middle infield here for the next decade for Red Sox fans for sure.
All right, let's go to another guy too, where you want to go for the next prospect on our list here, number 7.
Let's go. We haven't talked any pitchers yet, have we? So let's
We
go in with
have
a.
it all position heavy today for you.
I know. I did sprinkle in a few pitching names here
Okay.
because especially this. I'll go with this guy right here, who I think there's a. If you told me to bet $100 of my own money on this time next year, who's my number 1 pitching prospect in the 2023 Fantasy Baseball Black Book, I'd bet on Daniel Espino from
Okay.
the Cleveland Guardians. And I'm getting that right. I've not messed up the name yet. I'm on a
I
roll
got to
with
break
that.
the habit because I kept calling the Cleveland baseball team last year as a joke towards the end. And now I've got to condition myself to say Guardians. And look, the Guardians have done a really super job of growing young pitching over the last 5 years. Let's be honest. I mean, so that right
Absolutely.
off the bat, you're talking about an organization that seems to know what they're doing in that department.
Absolutely, and that's something I've focused on more and more. Like what teams, have the track record. Like look at Tampa Bay, obviously. Recently, look at Milwaukee and what they've been doing, especially with like Corbin Burns and Woodruff and Peralta. And Cleveland's just been a pitching factory for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, maybe close to a decade at this point. And yeah, the fact that I already when I first saw Espino, like the raw stuff was just absolutely electric. He can
Mm-hmm.
hit triple digits with his fastball. He has 3 really good two breaking balls and a changeup, all of which are very good pitches. This is a guy that could be one of the top strikeout arms in baseball. Like he's got that much swing and miss stuff, and he went from being a thrower with elite stuff to he's become more and more of a pitcher. Like he's hitting his spots more. The walk rate's coming down, which is with Cleveland that doesn't surprise me. So yeah, all the ingredients are here for a frontline arm. Like we could be talking top 15 fantasy arm down the road. Like we're taking the Freddie Peralta and Logan Webbs of the world this year. Like this kid is that good. Cleveland's track record is that good, and I have a huge amount of confidence in them getting the most out of him. So yeah, he's already a top 10 pitching prospect for me right now. And once these guys graduate, like Grayson Rodriguez and Shane Baz and others, there's a good
Mm-hmm.
chance we could be talking about Espino like we are about Rodriguez and Baz next year.
Well, the thing I like about Espino is the confidence he's got on the mound too. He's very
Oh yeah,
confident.
he has that swagger, that
Yeah,
bulldog mentality.
it's that confident swagger thing, and I think that serves you well too because it proves you have to be there. I've seen a lot of great pitchers, and sure you have too, that have all of the stuff, quote unquote, but they don't have the makeup. I feel like
Yep.
Espino has that on the mound, which is very important. He has the right demeanor. He's in control. He's got easy velocity. He's also got good mechanics too. There is not a lot of things going out of place. It's very simple. And you see a lot of pitchers, especially right-handed pitchers nowadays too. Sometimes they have a little extra going on. I feel like there's no wasted movement when you watch him throw. And again, that easy high heat is something I love about him too, where he can go up there and really dial it up when he needs to and get like a high strike out there. And I like that about Espino because he's not
Yep.
afraid to challenge hitters. And the track record with organizations matter. I mean, whether it be the Rays over these last few years, whether it be, the Cleveland Guardians, it doesn't matter. I mean, those are the organizations that continue to produce useful fantasy pitchers. So you have to pay attention to those organizations and you have to almost value those stocks a little more, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And
Mm-hmm.
even on the flip side, like I've been saying, I don't like Oakland hitters because Oakland hitters have kind of flailed out with high strikeout rates, or
Mm-hmm.
uh, Los
They
Angeles
have.
Angel, Los Angeles Angels arms. You've seen like all the high profile prospect arms that have just kind of flailed out and had 5+ ERAs at the major league level. So yeah, definitely. I know it's hard for some people to like find out, but like just kind of look at the recent track record of all these teams and what teams do well developing hitters or pitchers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely matters for sure.
All right, so 7 names down, a few more to go. Who's next on the list of 10 prospects to watch in 22?
Let's go with another pitcher here who I like nearly as much, not quite, but Yuri Perez from the Miami. I almost called them the Florida Marlins. Wow, the Miami. Talk about
Awesome.
that's a throwback.
Awesome. Let's go.
I don't know why, but my mouth always wants to say Florida Marlins, and
Every now and then I do the same thing, and then I think immediately of Jeff Conine every single time. That's like the first guy that always comes to mind. I don't know if that's right
yeah,
or wrong. It just does.
for me, it's probably I don't know why Jeremy Hermida. I don't know why he was.
Jeremy Hermida is an
I have
excellent
no idea
one.
why that's the first name. Obviously,
There's always those
Josh
certain
Beckett.
old Florida Marlins, especially that, like Trevor Hoffman. Like I remember the baseball cards of when they first, God, it was a couple other guys too from that, that first early draft time too, where
Yeah.
the players who were unprotected. Could you imagine if they did that nowadays in Major League Baseball? What a
Oh my
crazy thing that was to look back. And I know I'm a little older than you, so I probably remember this a little bit more fondly, but remember the David Need getting drafted by the Rockies and all these things. Like just, it was crazy. Like all these players were unprotected, and then Major League Baseball, two new teams could actually pick these guys. It was wild, man. Crazy times in MLB. But at any rate, who is next for the Miami Marlins for you?
Yeah, Yuri Perez, and this was a guy that was maybe the biggest breakout prospect or pitching prospect, I should say, this past year. He was only 18 for the entire season, and between low A and high A, facing hitters several years older than him on average. This guy posted a 196 ERA total in 20 starts with a 0.89 WHIP and 108 strikeouts to only 26 walks, and the walk rate went down at high A as opposed to low A. This guy's 6'8", 200
Mm-hmm.
pounds, very lanky, but I think he can still
Yeah.
fill it some more. But he's already can get up in the mid 90s, touch a little higher. Big curveball, solid changeup as well. All the metrics are very, very good. The spin rate and everything is very good on his curveball. Like this is a guy that could. I'm not saying I don't think he's got quite Daniel Espino's upside, but man, this could be a number 2 type pitcher in a major league rotation a few years down the road. And Miami is another org that has done a very good job over the last, they're more a recent team that's done really well with
Right.
pitching. So I think like Sandy Alcantara, Pablo Lopez, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they can fix Sixto Sanchez. We'll see. But, I like Miami, what they're doing on the pitching side of things. And Yuri Perez could be that next guy. Max Meyer and Edward Cabrera. So many talented arms in that org. And Perez has as much upside as any of them. So that definitely a name. He's already broken out. The stock's already risen a good amount in Dynasty. But, I think this is the last time to buy him before he gets to crazy elite prices and like top 25 price tag in Dynasty. So yeah, right now, go get Yuri Perez.
It's funny. The Marlins have done a really good job of identifying pitching talent. I'm not sure where they're at in terms of developing it. That's the problem. And let's hope. Let's hope they can turn Lizardo around and Sixto around.
Yes,
I mean,
I
because
love
you think about it,
Lizardo.
right? If I told you 3 years ago all those names would be in one spot, you'd say, "What? How could that possibly be?" Right?
Right?
But seriously, you think about it, like the Marlins scouting department has done a great job. It's the development people I'm a little worried about now. Like that's the thing. And when I'm watching Perez, the name that comes to mind for me is Ramon Martinez, which
Oh,
again,
yes.
dating myself a little bit, right?
Pedro's older brother.
Pedro's older, big, tall brother that people forget about. But Ramon back in the day was a pretty good pitcher for the
Yeah, he
Dodgers.
was.
And to me, when I watch him, he reminds me of him. Like you said, a lot of arms and legs kind of moving. A tall guy, a little lanky. But certainly, I think a pitcher that if he can harness all of that together, there's certainly the upside there and certainly an opportunity and a path for him too. And look, Alcantra's been great. Lopez has had some really good moments there. Elias Hernandez is another pitcher I think is a very fascinating piece. They've got a lot of pieces there in Florida,
They do.
Miami or wherever the hell it is today. But but it's just a matter of can they develop these guys and get them right? That's the question. But Ramon Martinez is the one that comes to mind for me. And you know what? If he has a little career like Ramon Martinez, we'll take that. There were a couple
Yeah.
very good frontline starter years for Ramon. All right, so that's another name off the list. Give me the next guy. I guess it would be number. Where are we up to? 1, 2, 3,
8.
4, 5. You were up to 8 already. My goodness, time flies when you're having fun.
Doesn't it? So let's go with, so we just mentioned a guy named Alcantara. So we'll go to a prospect named Alcantara. That's Kevin Alcantara with the Chicago Cubs. Former Yankees prospect, went over in the Anthony Rizzo deal last July. And another huge, strong, fast, athletic guy. He's 6'6", 190. I think he's already bulked up a little bit. He might be a little bit above that by now. But he absolutely raked this past year. It was only 34 games, but hit 345 with a 423 OBP. 5 home runs, 5 steals in 34 games. This is a guy that I already have him inside my top 100 overall.
Mhm.
And if he continues to produce like he has with the tools that he has, this could be a top 25 prospect by the end of the year. Like the power is there for 30 plus home runs, especially if he continues to fill out the frame, which he should. The speed, even with more bulk, he could still be a double-digit steal guy, and he's shown a pretty solid feel for hitting as well. He made major strides this past year, and even in 2020 during the lockout, like he was a much better pure hitter now than he was 2 years ago. So yeah, the arrow is pointing up here. The Cubs are one of the teams that have a pretty good track record developing hitters. So I like the org that he's in now. So do the Yankees too, but
Right.
especially the Cubs. The Cubs have had a really good track record over the last 5 to 10 years. So I think this could be another huge year for him, and you could see him in some top 25s before too long.
It's funny when you watch him hit a little bit. It reminds me a little of Javi Baez. Like it's
Yeah,
hard not to like kind of see like, oh yeah, it's kind of in that same mold. Right-handed power there. Maybe a little bit too much swing and miss sometimes. We shall see, but they need these guys to hit now because unfortunately that group that came up for Chicago years back where they won the World Series, that group is come and moved on, and the other group, Almora didn't become the player they thought he would. I don't think Happ really has become the player that they hoped he would.
yeah,
So they kind of need, and I like Ian Happ. He's not a bad
yeah.
player,
He's,
but
he's solid,
he's not the star, I guess, that they hoped that he was going to be.
right?
So I think that's the problem there. So if you're the Cubs right now, you want one of these guys to turn into Gleyber Torres pretty fast in this middle
Yeah,
infield, right?
and they have a lot of the we mentioned two here with Alcantra and Triantos. They have a lot of they've acquired in various trades: the Bryant trade, the Rizzo trade, the Baez trade. They got Pete Crow Armstrong from the Mets
Yeah,
and the
from the
Baez deal.
Mets.
Like they've got
Mhm.
they're all kind of at the lower levels, but a lot of talent. So if a couple of these guys click, you could find that next big three in some combination of these guys they've acquired.
It's the way to do it too. Build
Yep.
around position players, not around pitchers. Not around pitchers. Oh my goodness. I don't know why teams keep doing this stuff. All right, so we got 10 names on the list. We got number 10 coming up in a second. But before we get to number 10, I want to recap here. Josh Young, Riley Greene, James Triantos, Bryson Stott, Anthony Garcia, Kevin Alcantara, Nick York, Daniel Espino, Yuri Perez. So who's number 10 on the list here, Cross?
I'm gonna end with a guy that name you're gonna love, Vinnie Pasquantino.
Oh, my people, Vinnie Pasquantino. How you doing, Vinny?
You're gonna love the nickname that Jeff Ponce gave him from Baseball America, Italian Breakfast. That's,
Italian breakfast.
isn't that great?
That is great. Well, Italian breakfast, I would imagine that's a little espresso, maybe some panettone, and some fresh fruit. That sounds like Italian breakfast to me, personally.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good to me too.
Why did he call him Italian breakfast? This one I
I
gotta
don't
know more about.
I don't know. It was on a podcast which I have not had a chance to listen to. I have to go find that pod and go listen and see like what the context was around that. But Jeff has always been like even dating back to like his days at like Rasball and Prospects Live. Like he was always one of the a good. He always give us some good nicknames, so I'm not surprised he figured this one out.
Italian breakfast. I love it. All
Yeah.
right, so break him down for us.
So I was working on some stats a few weeks ago, and I put this tweet out there probably 2-3 weeks back. For prospects that were 22 years old or younger last year that had 150 or more plate appearances, that also had a walk rate above 10%, a K rate below 20%, and an ISO of 200 or more. There was about 15 to 20 names. And then when you raise the threshold of plate appearances to 250 and the ISO to 250, there were three. Anthony
Mm.
Volpe, who's a top 10 prospect now, Juan Yepez, breakout prospect for the Cardinals, and Vinnie Pasquantino. This guy absolutely dominated last year between high A and double A. Slash line was 300, 394, 563, 37 doubles, 24 bombs, as many walks as strikeouts, 64 of each in 116
Mm.
games. He's one of those big first basemen. He's going to be a first base, 6'4", 245. Can't really play anywhere else. And they have a log jam there already with the first base DH types with Nick Prado and MJ Melendez, maybe Sal Perez moves to DH at some point. So this kind of a log jam there. But I've heard from some that they like him more than Nick Prado. So he's got to get his chance. Like this guy can absolutely hit high average, high OBP, low K rate, which I love to see that from a first baseman his size to only have, the K rate that he did, only 64 strikeouts in 116 games. That is absolutely phenomenal. The good power. Maybe he's not a 40 home run guy, but 25 to 30, he'll get on base at a high clip. That has a high floor there as well because of that approach. And he's a guy that you could still get for a very reasonable price in dynasty leagues, but do it now because fast forward a year, he dominates again in AA, AAA, maybe he's up to Kansas City. That price tag will not stay low for long. So you definitely go out and get some Italian breakfast before it's too late.
I'm hungry right now, baby. Let's go.
Right?
Let's do it. I don't know. I don't have a nickname like that. Now, see, that's a good nickname, Italian breakfast. I always been saying for years now, baseball nicknames have really gone down south. Like they haven't
Yeah.
been nearly as good as they were in the 80s and 90s. Everyone's A Rod and this Rod and JP and like, no, these aren't nicknames. These are shortened names. Italian breakfast, that's a nickname. That I like. I'm all for this. Speaking of guys to buy in Dynasty right now, let's talk about that. So for those of you who are playing in Dynasty leagues, this is your opportunity. So get real close to your speaker device and listen close to Mr. Cross. He's going to give you 5 guys here. We're going to start with number 1 on his list, which is Jordan Montgomery of the New York Yankees.
Yeah, Montgomery, I just wrote up a 2022 starting pitcher sleepers article over on Fantrax HQ, and the first name I thought of, I was doing ADP post 200 guys. First thing that came to my mind was Jordan Montgomery. Again, I hate it because he's a Yankee, but he's been, his surface stats, he has the good but not great numbers. So that kind of keeps his price tag in check. But, he is ready to break out, I think, this year. He has his 2 most used offerings, his changeup and his curveball. Both had a whiff rate right around 40% last year, which is very good. Batting average against under 200 and a slugging right around 300 or less. He threw those offerings about 48% of the time, and he had the 8th best swinging strike rate in baseball for pitchers with 150 plus innings at 13.7%, which is, the 2 names right in front of him are Garrett Cole and Dylan Cease. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be, that good, obviously, but there's a lot to like in this profile for a breakout. And then another thing too, Ryan Bloomfield from Baseball HQ put out a tweet right before I did this article about pitchers that had 2 pitches with a 20% or greater swinging strike rate last season, and Montgomery was on there. Some other names were Corbin Burns with 3, Shane Bieber, Josh Hader, Giolito, Iglesias, and the list goes on and on. But a lot of impressive names there, and he was right involved there. So I think you could see a guy that could finish as like a top 40 arm that you can get well later than that in drafts, and he's not really too young anymore. He's around 30 years old. So I think you can get him for a pretty good price tag because people see that age start to creep up in dynasty and they start getting,
Right.
they
He doesn't have
kind
the
of
wear
shy
and
away.
tear. It's not like he's got like
Exactly.
all these, thousands of innings under his belt. He's got less than 400 innings in the major leagues. And his rookie year, he had a lot of success, and I think caught a lot of people by surprise. Then he had the injuries, right? Where, in 18 and 19, he barely pitched. And then you had a little bit in 2020 where it felt like he was kind of getting the feel. And it's funny you mentioned Montgomery because this was the one guy last year in spring training. I remember watching a Yankee game and I turned to my cousin. I was watching the game and I was like, Montgomery looks like a different pitcher on the mound to me this year. Like he looks so different. The demeanor was different. The confidence level looked different. He seemed to have good confidence in the fastball, which to me is the thing you got away from a little bit. Like you got to get back to that. Get back to the stuff that got you there and that confidence with the fastball and the location of the fastball. And right from then, and I started drafting Montgomery last year right off of just what I saw in spring training from him, and it paid off. Last year, 162 strikeouts and 157 innings. He had a 3.80 ERA. That's pretty good in the American League East last time I checked, especially with some of those ballparks and some of those offenses you got to face. And his FIP was 3.69. So it wasn't like Montgomery wasn't going out there and giving you good starts, because he absolutely was. It's just whether or not now, okay, can you now take it from that level, get to that 180 mark and do it over 30 starts in that way and give them more innings, because he had 30 starts last year, but you want to get more innings out of those starts and the efficiency. That to me is that next thing, Eric.
Yeah, and I think the Yankees really obviously they could bring in somebody after the lockout ends, but they really need him to really do that and step up and be that number 2, number 3 guy, because after Garrett Cole, there's more questions and answers in that rotation right now in terms of,
Oh yeah.
Taillon's coming back off injury. You don't know how, the young guys, Luis Heel was good, but he has a super high walk rate. So, yeah, they need Montgomery to really take that next step.
All right, let's go to another dynasty buy for you right now. Who's a good opportunity to buy low on and get on your rosters?
Alec Bone, 100%. Like people, when a top pro, even if it's a top guy like a Jared Kellneck, a top 5 guy, Bone wasn't top 5, but he was, top 20, top 25 on a lot of lists. Even when those types of guys come up and struggle, people are very quick to kind of like, no, maybe he's not that good. But you look under the hood with Alec Bohm, and yeah, he's not quite as good as we thought when he was coming up through the Phillies organization. But there's still a lot to like here. Last year the numbers were not good. 417 plate appearances, hit 247, 305, 342, 7 home runs. Not good, but at the same time, he had a 49.5% hard hit rate, which was the 90th percentile in baseball. He had a 89th percentile average exit velocity at 92 miles an hour. So he's still, the quality of contact metrics are still very good. Doesn't chase that often. Keeps, the K rate did go up a little bit, but he's shown that he's a much better, approach guy in the minor league. So I think he can drop that K rate down back down to 20% where it was in his rookie year. But, the thing with the kind of similar issue that Vlad had, obviously Bohm isn't Vlad, but he hits the ball into the ground way too often. He's had ground ball rates above 50% in each of his first 2 years. Fly ball rate is right around 15, 16%. That's not going to cut it when you're as slow as Alec Bohm is. Like, hitting the ball into the ground is not a good thing. So hopefully he can, have that kind of transformation that Vlad had last year when he started hitting the ball in the air more often. And I think if you see that, you can see a nice bounce back from him. Yeah, not the sexy profile because it's, hit and power only, no speed, but 260, 270, 25 home runs, that'll play. And he'll probably get a lot of RBI hitting right behind Bryce Harper too. So, and nice buy low right now because from what I've seen on just social media and rankings and whatnot, his value is very, very low right now. So good buy right now.
Yeah, Bohm is actually a player that I busted out on last year. I had a lot of shares because I
Me
thought
too.
he was that good, and I also thought that even if he didn't have light tower power, that ballpark would help him out enough that at least he would hit for power, even if the average didn't really come right away. But unfortunately, it was
Right.
neither, and that's just unacceptable. You got to do one of the two. I'm gonna buy back in sparingly this year, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. In Dynasty, it's worth a look because when the stock hits rock bottom and he's still so young and still so much ahead of him, there's no
Mm-hmm.
reason not to give it a shot. And I think that's something where people just aren't patient enough, with certain players.
Right.
And he's not Vlad. Let's be honest. He's not
Exactly.
that kind of talent. But can he be a contributor guy? Yeah, I think there's still plenty of time for him to develop into that. I don't want to call him Michael Franco yet either, where he's just a
Yeah. No.
bust. I don't want
Yeah.
I don't want to go to that extreme at the same time. Maybe somewhere in between. Let's go. Now,
Yeah.
speaking of young, Jared Kellneck was just 21 years old last year. So are you buying on him right now? Is this maybe your last opportunity in Dynasty Leagues to get him on your roster if you don't have it? And is it worth doing?
The answer is a resounding yes to all of those questions, Joe. Everyone that knows me knows I'm probably the biggest Jared Kellneck guy around at this point, or maybe Joe Doyle from Prospects Live. He's been pumping him up as well. He's a Seattle guy too. So, but Kellneck, you saw like hints of the potential last year, and even you look at just with the numbers he had, it was how bad he was for a good 2/3 of his season. He still had a 650 plate appearance pace of 24 home runs, 10 steals, 71 runs, and 74 RBI. 24 10, 145 combined runs and RBI. That's not too bad for how
No.
bad he was. And then August, September, the contact rate started going up, the K rate started coming down, the walk rate went up. In September, he was very, very good. Had a 537 slugging percentage, 295 ISO, 18 RBI, 18 runs, 7 home runs, and 3 steals. So, yeah, definitely it's trending up because what's weird with Kellneck, he went to a different stance. Like he was more hunched over when he was struggling, which is weird because when changing his stance after he had done so much good in the minor leagues with his
I
old
hate when
stance,
guys do that. I
and I
hate
don't know
when
if that was
people change their approach. Like, whatever got you to the major leagues at 21
exactly
years old, just trust it. And you know what? I blame coaches for that. That's when a
yeah
coach has to sit back and say, "Hey, kid, look, it'll come eventually. Just don't
right
worry about it. Like, don't start changing what got you to the big leagues at 21." Oh,
exactly,
it's the most
especially when he
frustrating thing.
hadn't struggled yet. Like
No,
it was, and I don't know if that was a Seattle coaches thing and that was a him thing. I'm not sure, but he kind of started reverting back to his old stance, being more upright, and you saw he started to take off late in the season. So yeah, I definitely still think there's a path to 25 to 30 home runs, 10 to 15 steals, solid average. Yeah, definitely a great buy right now because I'm still all in on Kellner. I think he's gonna be a top 30, top 40 player for years to come.
all right, that's number 3 on your list. Who is number 4 on your dynasty buys for this season?
Let's stick in the outfield here with, because sometimes it's not always about buying low.
Mhm.
Sometimes you got to buy high, so to speak. And that's the case here with Brian Reynolds. He's so everything, everybody in Pittsburgh is underrated at this point. Any good player in Pittsburgh, does not get the love that they deserve.
Well, because it's such a negative situation, that's why.
Right.
They look at it 100 loss team, and they're it's nothing to get excited about, and it's a shame because it doesn't mean you can't get some fantasy statistics out of those guys. You can.
Absolutely. Exactly. Especially with Brian Reynolds. You look at, he said now had 3 years in the major leagues. And I'm for the most part throwing out 2020 for a lot of guys looking at the bigger picture. And with him, you take out 2020 where he only hit 189 in 55 games. His rookie year, 2019, hit 314 with 16 home runs and 37 doubles in 134 games. This past year, 302 with 24 home runs and 35 doubles in 159 games. OBP flirting with 400.
Yeah,
Slugging
that's
percentage
the
over
piece.
500 each of his 2 full years. This is one of the top contact guy, good sneaky power. He's still 26 in his physical prime. Going to be in the middle of that order, which should improve. I think Key Brian Hayes can be pretty solid.
Can't get
O'Neal
worse,
Cruz.
Cross. Let's
Right,
be
you
honest.
can't get worse.
Can't get much worse.
They get some nice young pieces like Brian Hayes, O'Neal Cruz, so he'll be hitting right in the middle of that. So yeah, definitely, I'm buying Reynolds. You can still, like I said, he's Pittsburgh, so the price tag is still a bit lower than it should be. So this is a guy that I'm buying high right now in dynasty leagues.
Reynolds was one of my favorite DFS guys last year, all the time. All the
money.
I'm looking for a little budget saver. Oh, let's plug Brian Reynolds into this lineup and see what happens.
Yep.
Just hit me a double score run, and we're square, Brian. That's all you need to do. And you know what? He would do it more often than not. All right, so there's another name. Let's give you the fifth name here on our list here of guys to buy in dynasty.
Another buy high guy that I'll admit I was slow to come around to, but at this point, I think he's the guy I have on most amount of my teams this year as my ace on probably 2/3 of my fantasy teams. And that's Logan Webb from the Giants. This guy, the ground ball rate is off the charts with him, 62.2% ground ball rate, but he's not just a pitch to contact ground ball guy. Like, he can miss bats too. Now, last year he had a 26.5% K rate. The whiff rate was very good as well. And he can miss bats with a few different pitches. He had a 28.7% whiff rate, which is well above league average, league average is right around 25, 26% or so with the whiff rate. So he's above that. The fact that he can get ground balls, limit hard contact like he does, and miss bats like he does. Like, he had a 91st percentile chase rate, keeps the walk rate in check, 6%. All of the expected metrics last year backed up what he did. I'm all in. Like, he's San Fran, they're doing something up there with pitching, and he's gonna be there for a while. Gausman's out of town, but Logan Webb is gonna be there for the next several years at least. And I think you're gonna see a lot of top 10, top 15 pitching seasons from Logan Webb. So believe in Logan Webb, and whatever the price is, I'd be okay buying right now.
All right, so the names once again: Jordan Montgomery, Alec Bone, Jared Kellneck, Brian Reynolds, and Logan Webb. Those are guys to buy right now in dynasty leagues. Either buying high because they're underappreciated and they're producing, or buying low because there's still a good path ahead of them. Cross, I got two more quick questions for you because I want to pick that giant brain of yours. First is Jesus Lizardo. I mean, this was the guy who was supposed to be the end-all be-all there for the Oakland A's, has not come to fruition. Gets dealt to the Miami Marlins and did not go well for him. Now, I have a soft spot for Lizardo because I think it was back in 2018 or 19 I traded him in a dynasty league for Garrett Cole, and it worked out. I was very pleased with that trade. And it's a good lesson for everybody. If you can get a good big-time starting pitcher who's already shown you he belongs in the major leagues for a prospect, do it every single time you can. But where are we at with Lizardo right now? Because he's still just 24 years old. Is this a guy that you're taking shots on anywhere? And if so, what is your expectation for him in 2022?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely buying Lizardo. Maybe it's he needed a change of scenery. That could be it. Miami is a good place for him to go. So hopefully they can kind of right the ship here. But there's some things in place that you like with him. Obviously, he has the two pretty solid secondary offerings, curveball and changeup. Both had a whiff rate above 35%. Curveball was very good, 42.4% whiff rate, 188 batting average against last year. It's one of the top curveballs in baseball. That changeup was solid as well. And he has the premium velocity from the left side. He averaged 95.9 on his four-seamer, 95.1 on the sinker. Both got hit very hard, though. That was the issue. Like, the opposing hitters hit 348 against his fastball with a 674 slug, and sinker was 337 with a 607 slug. And the expected metrics are nearly as high. So, like, that wasn't fluky. That was, people were just
Expected
squaring
metrics
up.
is on fire, I believe.
Yes, they're ablaze for sure.
Oh.
And a lot of that was command. Yeah, you look at go to Savant, look at the heat maps on his fastball. More so the four seamer, it was just left over the heart of the plate way too often. So I think if you see some better fastball command from Lizardo, again, he has the velocity. That's not the issue. It's but again, you need to command. That's why I like Joe Ryan, who averages like 91, but commands it so well. He has a very good fastball. At command, I would take command over velocity any day of the week. And if you see that
the art form of pitching, which is
exactly,
lost.
you see that kind of take a step forward for Lizardo next year. I think you could see him, even if he gets back to maybe not elite levels like we thought, but even as like a high 3 ERA, 25% K rate guy, that could put him in like Jose Barrios territory or something like that. So definitely, I'm definitely buying Lizardo right now.
All right, last one for you, and it's selfish reasons too. I want to talk about the two Reds prospect pitchers here, Hunter Greene and Nick Lodolo, because certainly last year, very exciting what we saw from those guys in the minor leagues. If you only had to pick one, would it be Greene or Lodolo? Who would you rather have?
Man, I like them both. And
so what you're saying is I should make room for both of them on my roster and jettison somebody else, is what you're saying.
Probably, but if I had,
because I feel like they're both ready. I don't think there's anything left for those guys to prove.
Right.
And if the Reds can get those two guys on that main stage rotation, Reds are gonna be a handful. I feel I really do.
Especially if they hold on to their three good ones right now with Castillo, Gray, and Tyler Mahle, they'll probably trade at least one of those guys. That could open the door quicker for Greene or Lodolo. Right. Yeah, that's very scary what they could do with that rotation. But if I had to pick one, I guess I'd lean Hunter Greene. There's a little more relief risk with Hunter Greene, but
he has the righty over the lefty anyway, right?
Yeah, the premium fastball. He's a pretty good slider. That's a plus pitch. Mixes in the changeup as well. Pretty good command and control profile with him too. And Lodolo is just as good. Probably has the higher floor, but give me Greene there. But I love them both.
He's the co-host of the Fantrax Toolshed podcast. He is the main writer and prospect analyst for Fantrax. He's also the prospect guru of the Fantasy Baseball Black Book 2022, available now on Amazon. Get it and read all about his top 100 prospect profiles. It's better than anything you're going to find anywhere for fantasy when it comes to Dynasty. I'm telling you, Eric is also the official editor of the Black Book last 2 years too, and I just want to personally thank you for all of your tremendous work here, not just on the Black Book, but all your tremendous work in the fantasy baseball community. So much passion, so much insight. You're one of my favorite people to talk to, and you're one heck of a dad too. I just want to point that out there. Eric Cross is challenging me for Father of the Year. You got to come correct for that title though, brother. We're going to have a steel cage match, you and I. But Eric, like I said, man, I hope you have a wonderful season. This won't be the last time we chat. This is just the first. But I'm really excited after spending this about hour or so with you talking prospects for some of these young kids to crack major league teams and start making an impact.
Yeah, I always appreciate you, Joe. Like I said, you've been a good friend to me over the last handful of years. You brought me on the Black Book, 2018.
I don't even know anymore.
Several years back when I was still kind of getting my feet wet in this industry. So I appreciate the chance you took on me back then and the friendship we've had. The bond as
when you were just a prospect back in 2017, 18.
I was James Triantos back then.
They were just James Triantos, and I saw this raw kid. I thought that guy's got a lot of talent. I'm gonna put him to work. But but you do, man, you do, and it's showing. And I think the mark you're making, and follow him on Twitter, please, at EricCross04. A tremendous follow over on Twitter if you do anything baseball related, not just prospects and Dynasty. But seriously, Eric, I'm so proud of the work you're doing, and just keep up the good work, my friend.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you, bud.
All right, I want to remind everybody, make sure you head over to fantasypros.com/draftwizard and start getting your mock draft on right now. It's out. It's available. Go do it and grab a friend, because the multi-user draft software is out there too. And you could start doing mock drafts and getting people involved and start getting prepared for your fantasy season. Again, at fantasypros.com/draftwizard. And again, check out Eric Cross, EricCross04 on the Twitter machine. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Eric Cross, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.